Did you know that the best players in COD Mobile don't just rely on their skills? They use a lot of hidden settings in the game that give them a massive advantage because most people don't even know these settings exist. So here are some game-changing settings that you need to know about from level 1 all the way up to level 3. We're starting with level 1, and the first setting will fix a problem with the snipers. Now we all know that it's really hard to have a good accuracy when you're using snipers in COD Mobile. This is partly because when you're scoping in with a sniper, you can't really see anything through the scope, and because of this, using snipers can be a nightmare for many players. But don't worry, because there's a setting that you can change to see through the scope even while you're scoping in. And the best part is that this setting even makes your crosshair bigger, which helps you improve your accuracy. This setting is called the realistic scope, and you can find it on the audio and graphics tab. Make sure to turn on this setting and you should be good to go. Alright, now have a listen to these two clips and see if you can tell the difference. Well, on the first clip, you can hear a lot of white noise coming from the background of the map, but on the second clip, there's no background noise at all. But why is background noise important for your gameplay? Well, if there's a lot of background noise, then it gets kinda hard to hear the sounds of your enemies like footsteps, and we need to make sure that we can hear these sounds clearly. So go to your audio settings and find this setting called the ambient sound, and make sure you have this setting turned off and all the background noise will be gone. Moving on to the next setting, this one will help you win more fights. When I didn't know about these settings, I used to lose a lot of fights in close range, even if I was using a decent weapon. Not because of my aim, but mainly because my weapon wasn't shooting even if I pressed the fire button. You see, by default, your weapon only starts shooting when you're fully scoped in, which is not great for having fights at close range. Because at that point, you're basically relying on the ADS speed of your weapon, which is not something you can control, but you can use a setting that allows you to shoot while you're scoping in. This setting is called the one-tap ADS fire, and if you turn on this setting, your weapon will shoot even while you're aiming. Alright, so now we're at level 2, and that means it's time to talk about settings that are even more powerful. For example, there's a new setting that was added recently which improves your awareness. Normally, if your enemy is using a dark skin while being inside a shadow, then you're basically cooked. Because sometimes you can't really see an enemy in darker areas of the map and it has nothing to do with your skills. But the good news is that now there's a setting in the game that makes your enemies glow in the dark, allowing you to spot them without any problem. With this setting turned on, you can see your enemies inside shadows even if they're using skins that are dark. This setting is called the enemy recognition, and it's inside the basic settings. By default, it's turned off, but you have to make sure to turn it on. Alright, so now I want to show you a powerful setting, but first have a look at these two explosions. Well, when the setting was turned on, you can see that my screen was shaking when the grenade exploded, but after I turned this setting off, you can see that the shaking was basically gone. Now this is something that's important to consider when you're playing game modes like Search and Destroy, because explosions are very common on that game mode. And if your screen is shaking, you can't really focus on the game and you might even lose the match. So go to your audio and graphics settings and find a setting called the explosion shake, and then make sure to turn it off and the explosions will be gone. Now that you've dealt with the explosions, it's time for you to change the setting for your movements. You see, in COD Mobile by default, you have to press and hold the crouch button to go prone, which takes a significant amount of time, and because of that, your movements are going to be very slow. But there's a setting that you can change to have a completely separate button for going prone. If you press this, you can instantly go to prone mode without painfully having to use the crouch button every time. To find this setting, go to your basic settings and look for a setting called hold to crouch. Once you find it, turn that setting off and you should be good to go. Let's move on to the next setting, which is a setting that will allow you to play smarter. Normally, when you're fighting your enemies, you can't really tell how much health they have, so you can't really decide whether you should push or not. But there's a setting in the game that allows you to see exactly how much damage you did to your enemies in every shot. This information is very important because it allows you to have a better idea of your enemy's health, so you can decide if you should play aggressive. So go to your basic settings and find a setting called the damage number and make sure to turn it on. Also, you have to set the damage transparency to 100 so you can see the numbers more clearly. Alright, so now we're at the level 3 settings, which means these are the best settings of this video. For example, COD Mobile recently added a feature that allows you to peek from different objects like cars and walls. This feature even adds some new animations to your movements like new sliding animations, running animations, and even jumping animations. This new feature makes COD Mobile feel more like the PC and console versions of Call of Duty, and here's what you have to do to turn it on. First, go to your basic setting and then scroll down until you see a setting called the auto lean. When you find this setting, make sure to turn it on, and now you'll be able to lean animation with your weapons. Now the next setting will turn any weapons into a mythic weapon. Obviously, your weapon is not gonna magically turn into a mythic gun, but it will add a feature to your weapon that only mythic guns have. You see, in a mythic weapon, there's a feature where you hit an enemy and it makes an explosion on their body. Well, you can actually have this feature on any weapon in COD Mobile. To do this, go to your audio and graphics settings and find the section called the hit effects. Then under the effects style, select the option that says battlefield smoke. And as for the effects color, make sure to use yellow, and now you should have a cool animation when you hit an enemy. Moving on to setting number 9, this is a setting that allows you to play more efficiently on smaller maps. The problem with smaller maps like Nuketown is that in these maps there are a lot of obstacles like cars and different furnitures, and sometimes climbing these obstacles gets very overwhelming, but there is a faster way to climb these obstacles, and of course you have to use a setting for that. With this setting, you can slide your joystick to climb these obstacles, which is much faster than using the jump button. So go to your settings and keep scrolling until you see a setting called fast climb, and then change it from off to the one that says fast, and now you can use your joystick to climb. The next tip is something that will significantly reduce the lag of your game. You see, sometimes you might have a bad internet and that will cause you to lag, but you can use this app called GearUp to connect to a better server and reduce the latency of your game. It even improves your FPS and makes your game a lot smoother. Personally, I've been using GearUp for around 2 years now, but you don't have to listen to me because they have a solid 4.9 stars on Trustpilot with over 3,000 reviews. So if you want to try it out, then I'll make sure to leave the link to download GearUp on the description. But I hope you guys found this video helpful, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace out.